Welcome to the Beer and Gear podcast with Chris Taylor.
Okay, welcome to the podcast, and today we've got a good friend of mine on with us, bass player extraordinaire Eric Rupert. Now, this guy's one of the legends in the business. He's been there, seen it, done it all. We've spent many a time at many a trade show together as well. Eric, do you want to tell everyone a bit about yourself?
Well, bass player, been doing it for over 30 years. Moved from the States over here to the UK, where I met Chris. Basically just a guy who's been the meat and potatoes guy behind a lot of people. The sideman theory. It's great.
Yeah. Where did it all start out?
Well, I actually started out in Ohio in the States, and I was a tuba player, and I started playing double bass because I was asked to, and I went, "Oh, this is cool. This thing's cool. What's this do?" And in the process, my parents thought it would be cool to get me an electric bass. So they went to a store, and the guy's like, "Well, here's what we have." And they looked up, and there was a fretless, no lines electric bass. And they went, "Well, that looks like what he plays at home. We'll take that one." So
Right.
I immediately get a bass that doesn't sound, I'm like, it's not out of tune all the time. But so it all started there. And, I went to a couple of different colleges through the process. So, I was lucky enough to meet some great cats through that, and just got into it and quit school to go on the road with Dr. John.
Right. Okay.
Which was kind of cool. It wasn't on purpose. Funny enough, I left school we usually have like a 1 or 2 week break in the spring, like everybody does. And I got called to do a thing through a drummer friend of mine. So I went out and did it. And at the end of the 2 weeks, the guy came up to me and he goes, "We'd really like to, we've been offered a lot more gigs. Would you be willing to stay on?" And it was a bit like, I guess you guys have the party band thing here, but we would play big conventions. So it was like a Broadway West End show package. And we went to Japan, we went everywhere. But I had to call my university and go, "I don't think I'm coming back." And one of my teachers said, "Well, before you sign anything, send me the contract." I said, "Yeah, sure." And I faxed it to him in the 80s. And he called me up and he goes, "This is more than I make teaching. Take the gig."
Right. And that was from a university. Okay. The university.
Yeah, well, it was the head of the jazz program. And I just said to him, I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "You can always go back to school, but you're never going to get paid to play this easily." He said, "Go do it." Because they only wanted like a 3 or 4 month kind of deal. So we were going to be done by August. I could go back to school, and I didn't really lose that much money in the deal because I was on a scholarship. But it ended up being 2.5 years of touring. So it was great. It was a company. They hired us. And then if people needed backing musicians, we would get a phone call, and oddly enough, one of them was a drummer in Atlanta needed a bass player. We had met them through the process of touring. And he said, "Yeah, I need a bass player in Atlanta for like a month." And we had a break coming up. And the boss said, "Well, we'll have to get our fee." And I was like, "Whatever." And it was like, "Yeah, it's with Dr. John." I was like, "Okay." And I showed up and they handed me a book of music that thick.
Yeah.
And they said, "We don't know what he's going to call, but this is the music that you need." I was like, that was kind of the start of it all. But Dr. John, quite cool. I mean, he's just passed, and what a shame. And actually, Roland, Roland Guerin, the Ibanez guy, who's been with Mac for years now. But yeah, we kind of crossed over a couple of times, and it's always been fun to run into him. Whenever we're in New Orleans, trade shows, whenever. He was just actually over with Paul Gilbert. He was touring with Gilbert's gig, so that was cool. It was cool to see him. But yeah, so that was the first real partial. And then the Broadway thing kind of kicked in.
Wow.
And I started And oddly enough, so you got Dr. John as your first real thing. I mean, I had played with a lot of people by then, actually, because we had done one night stints with different artists on this gig. And then I had some time off. I did a couple of years on that. And it was, oh, have a break. You know, what are you going to do? I made some money. I was like, seriously, 19, 20. I think I turned 21 while I was on that gig. Actually, I did. We were in Florida, and in the States, we had plastic driver's license back in the day, and it had to be sent to you in the mail. You couldn't leave with it. So I turned 21. I went to the driver's license bureau, piece of paper that I could drive. We got to Florida, and it was all of a sudden like, I'm 21. I can go to all the clubs. So every place I went, they're like, no, you need a picture license. So I pulled out my passport, and after touring for years and living all over the world, I even laugh more about this. This guy looked at it and he goes, but this isn't a real ID. I'm like, what, the only one I can go around the world with? Nobody cares about my driver's license. So yeah, but got lucky enough. One of the guys inside knew me and just said, you know, he's all right. So, but yeah, I was living in Florida for a while when I turned 21. So that was cool. But then Broadway kind of kicked in, and I got a phone call for Cabaret, the musical Cabaret. And I thought, oh, this is cool. I only really knew the movie, and I knew a bit of musicals from playing, you know, whatever, or tuba mostly. And so we go to New York for the auditions, walk in, and I look over and I'm like, is that Joel Grey, who was in the movie, of course? And it's like, oh yeah, he's producing and he's going to be doing some of the shows. I was like, so like, I literally was getting very lucky to get cool pops of, you know, quite famous people early on. It was quite nice.
Yeah. So
You know.
what's the differences then? What's it like doing the sort of Broadway production for a player? Is it a monumental task? Is it obviously the differences from completely from jamming with bands and artists? It must be a different mindset, mustn't it, really, with how it's all done to cues and done to
well, it is, but I mean, Chris, you know this as well as I do, and hopefully a lot of people get it out there. When you're out with a tour with a big rock band or an artist, a lot of times people don't realize how choreographed that rock show is too. You know, you can go see Slash or Heart or anybody, and they'll be 48 minutes exactly. And you'll go, how can they do that every night? And you think it's because they've written a set list down on a piece of paper, which always looks really good. But nowadays, even those shows have somewhat click tracks and do some things where the drummer's listening to a very specific rigid thing so it doesn't go off, you know. And even the solos sometimes, I mean, you're a massive Eddie fan. There's certain times it's great to see Eddie go nuts. But if you would have gone and seen certain songs without the solo exactly what you thought it was, you go, oh, that was cool, but I really like that part. And, you know, so you kind of, but yeah, it is different in the sense that you're running with a group of people that really are never seen as musicians in a Broadway tour or a West End tour. You're either in the pit or you're backstage, you know, you're kind of hidden away, which makes it somewhat nice because you're reading music. So, you know, 90% of the time you're reading the music. And I say 90% of the time only because there are some times when you'll just get a chord chart for a bass player, or so you can actually do your thing. Yeah. But it's all click track. I mean, it's been for years. Yeah. So nothing's really changed in that respect. And there's a few shows. I mean, nowadays there's even more shows. I think Six, which is an all-female show. The band is actually on the whole stage. So there's a few shows like that. I did a couple where they were Gershwin shows, and they actually had the band on stage for some of the set. So we were on this moving piece. So we're in tuxedos for the whole show, and 4 songs they roll us out. And the rest of the time you're in a tuxedo going, why in the world am I dressed in this?
Because it pays.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you know, hey, you know what they call us, so it's all good. But yeah, it is quite a difference, but it's a little bit like being a studio player too. When you're in the session and you're either handed a chord chart or you're handed real music, or somebody says, hey man, just can you create this, So
There's a big tip in that for everyone. Learn to play to a click.
yes. Oh. Well, I mean, you'll never play well with the drummer, and it's not just about a click. It's just work with the metronome.
Yeah.
I mean, I did yesterday. I did 7 hours of lesson sessions on Zoom. I'm doing some stuff for Solent University in Southampton,
Oh, nice.
and so yeah, and it's weird what you as a player. I mean, I'm old, Chris. You know that. So it's weird for me when you're talking to somebody really young and I know they don't know everything, but the basics, you sometimes go, really? I'm like, you should really be working with the metronome. Yeah, I turn the click on my Logic Pro and I play along. It's like,
it's because they've got nowadays.
I know.
There's too much. They've got everything to hand, and
Yeah.
things that, I mean, you can download a metronome for free.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've got the if you want a blatant advertisement per Chris Taylor years ago. I've got my Ibanez metronome and tuner on my phone.
There you go.
But I remember, because you've got to pay for it. And I remember when I was at the NAMM show, Mike Arrigo said, mate, get on your phone right now. I'll give you the code. It's free.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm like, and then like 4 years later, they're all free.
Yeah. I mean, Gibson have literally just launched their app finally, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Henry's gone now, so there's a lot of things they're going to do that don't have to do with motorcycles. Harley Davidson's never going to make another penny on Gibson. I don't know what they're going to do.
It's crazy. I mean, I do, moving on to say, just while we're on Gibson.
Oh yeah.
It's I've done the virtual NAMM thing this year. I logged in for all that, and Gibson seem to be focusing on the high. It's on the high end. I think most companies are, because obviously in the global pandemic, and it's much harder to forecast any kind of import that a brand can do. How do you program your factories when you don't know they're going to be open? So I think a lot of manufacturers have literally stuck to their own stuff they can make in their own factories, and inherently that's the higher price stuff. And I think a lot of manufacturers are doing that. I've seen people complaining to me over Facebook, like saying like, oh, why is everything like $2,000 that's coming out this year? It's like, well, because people need to still make stuff, but they can only control their own factory. They can't.
Yeah.
So that's why you're seeing Gibson literally doing, okay, this year we're doing loads of signature.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, Ibanez has done it. Gibson's done it. ESP's doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, even people like, I mean, we know, if people don't know about the Paul Reed Smith buys, and all the companies are getting either purchased or becoming another part of a thing, mostly for distribution. I think when people see like Mesa and that being bought, they immediately think they're going to move everything to the factory and they're going to ruin the product.
Yeah.
No, this is talking about distribution worldwide, because when the guys at Mesa need to send something, a guy bought one Boogie amp in India. To send that costs almost as much as it costs to make the amp, and you can't completely make the guy who bought it pay for everything. They try. Everybody tries, but shipping's not as expensive as it was back in the day. You and I started in the industry when, I mean, just sending it around the island of the UK was like, a lot more pennies. Now, if it's a certain weight and you're sending out a load of product out of a warehouse, it's almost free, really.
Yeah,
paying for it.
From a distribution side of it, that's why you'd always have a threshold on it. So if you make your order, if your order's over this much, you get free shipping. And by the way, here's our catalog, because here's our amps, here's our basses, here's our guitars,
exactly,
here's our drums, here's our cymbals. And it makes it easier for the store to put one order in a week, for example, and have a van load, or have a
exactly. I mean, Fender, talking about the whole more expensive product thing. I mean, I think because you and I have worked on both sides of the fence. I mean, I'm not only a player, but I've also been not only a clinician for a lot of the companies. Of course, I worked for Gibson for a few years when I lived in Nashville, but I also have worked in the factories. I worked with Dean Markley and helped develop strings for some players, because sometimes the guys who create the product really understand what it means to talk to the players. they'll be like, oh yeah, man, I need some more like, and I need some, some dark to that. And I need some, and the string guy's like, I got stainless steel, I got bronze, it's like, which one's going to work for you? So there has to be that kind of like, oh, well, he's playing this music, this is what we'll do. And I mean, we've seen it happen with the string companies, where now you've got the metal strings, you've got the drop D strings and drop B, and so they've started to market it more towards the player being able to see it. Well, I play in, oh, that's a 7-string set in drop. That's what I want. It says it on the tin. It used to be you had to know the number and what the string was, and I need a 1.
Yeah, but you see it with Dunlop are great at that, because they do like literally here's a drop C set, here's a drop B set, here's a C sharp set, and literally the way they market it is quite clever, because it's like they're thicker strings, but we do a looser coil in it, so it feels like the same as a set of 9 or 10s, but it's a 12.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like there's a company, I can't off the top of my head, I should be able to tell you who they are, but they're a company and they're doing that whole thing where it's not about gauging, where you're doing even gauges or whatever. It's about gauging for tension. So that's what you're talking about. When you pick it up. Yeah, the core. Yeah, with the hex core, you can get a different thing. And, when I worked at Dean Markley, I went up to their factory in Michigan, and, for the first 2 weeks, I almost thought it was a joke. Dean himself had called and said, hey, I need you to go up and work on some strings. We actually did the Billy Dickens 7-string at the time, and Will Lee had just come out with his SR2000s. And they were in a weird, scaling. It was like 127 to 47 instead of a 45. Oh, I like it a little heavier. And then I went in and we start using the, checking the sizes, and you're realizing it's really 45.7. Like, the marketing is what it's all about. It's about saying, hey, how cool is this? Yeah, great. And I learned so much just from that whole tension thing. But for the first 2 weeks, the guy that ran the factory is like, it's great that you're here, man, but I need you to make strings. And I'm like, dude, I'm like a bass player. And I went out, and it was really enlightening to make a 9, to make wound strings, to put ball ends on strings, to put 2 ball ends on strings, and then get the phone call from Ned Steinberger going, yeah, can you make me and you're going, yeah, Ned, I could do that. It was a cool experience. But sorry, exactly, we'll run off on total.
That's totally cool. That's totally cool.
Loads of that. Yeah. But with Gibson and with a lot of it, we heard from Fender a couple of years ago that they were going to do this thing where you could go on the website and basically mix and match, buy what you wanted, like the Jackson and Charvel company used to do. Mm-hmm. If you remember years ago, they actually had it where if you went on the computer at the music store and you were a Jackson dealer, you could get a different neck, different pickups, whatever you want, and you get it really quick because they only made 4 guitars.
Yeah.
The electronics. I mean, not to be weird, but you've got a Telly sitting behind you. It's like if you think about Fender, there's a Strat and a Telly. Well, okay. So what's the big difference if I buy a Strat with those pickups? Oh, those are double tap coil, blah blah. All the words, and you go, But Fender was going to do that thing a few years ago where they were getting out of stores because they just didn't feel like they were getting the rebuys. We're buying a cheap guitar, inexpensive, but we're not buying the next one up. How come? Well, because some kid turned into a Slash fan after he got that inexpensive Strat with the amp. So they went and bought the Epiphone, that went with that. That's why Fender was losing that business. I think the expensive guitars are going to be there because they know they're not going to get return business as easily, especially with the pandemic. You're going to buy a guitar and you're going to keep it. I think some of the guitars that are being made and bought right now people are going to keep them for years. I mean, you've got guitars you've had for years. I've got guitars I've had for a few years, I mean, I used to be the swatch guy, like, oh, that's new. That's cool. I'll have one of those. Now I'm like buying stuff thinking, I got rid of some stuff last year going, I haven't played this in 2 years. It's really cool. Yeah. But there's cool sitting at home translate into anything but sitting at home,
Well, yeah.
But
I mean, it's the ones that I find most value with my stuff now. I think I've got, what have I got? I did have 50, but I've got like 47, 48, 46 now. Because they make really good presents to people that are close to, that
you were saying that at Christmas. I was waiting for my Eddie Van Halen guitar to show up, but it just never did.
It's here.
It's there. I like the gold top better. I think maybe you'll have a laugh. But when I was doing PV clinics, I mean, I've told you this before. I know that's just gorgeous, but I told you this before. I got a chance. It was Eddie and Mike were doing a thing at the PV booth or at the PV party. And I remember hanging out with Mike and Eddie came in, and I have told you this story before, but it was just like, I mean, Mike was iconic anyway as a bass player. I mean, he's the guy that had the Jack Daniels bass. I mean, when you're a kid, that's cooler than any other thing in the world. Yeah. It's headless. The tuners are down here.
And it looks like a bottle.
Daniel. Yeah. And it was like, and then he would drink out of a bottle on stage. How cool could this gig be? I need to have that gig. You can do all these horrible things.
And behind all that, he looks like a normal guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, now he's got, I don't know if you're hip to it, but he's got Mike's chili sauce.
Yeah. He's got the chili sauce
thing.
Matt Anthony's.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Mike Anthony's. Yeah. It looks great. I need to order some, but I'm afraid the shipping will be ridiculous.
Well, it's like they say, where do you stop? You want your Michael Anthony chili. You want your San Diego like tequila and rum. But unfortunately, the only time I ever tried that stuff is like when I've been in America, because to even buy a bottle of Cabo costs like so much to import.
It's ridiculous over here. Yeah. Well, I remember being in Cabo and playing at his place. And thinking, we were down there, we did a gig, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And in my head, I'm like, Sammy will be here. It's like, oh, no, he's out on the road. I'm like, oh, like, what? It's only open when he's in town. No, it doesn't work.
Have you seen that they've done they've done the Pandemic album where it's all recorded remotely on their phones, just like, that's cool. Man,
it's phenomenal. It's hilarious because they did it. And did you see, is it me? Did Jack Black get connected to them too? I think on one of Jack Black's thing, he dresses like a woman. He does all of his nut stuff, but I think it's got Michael Anthony and the drummer that they're using on
Jason Bonham,
Yeah. Oh, well, there's Jason, but there's the other guy too. There was another guy doing some stuff with them. It wasn't Arnoff, was it, when he was doing the Chicken Foot thing?
Kenny did Chicken Foot for a while Chad Smith was on tour with Chili's,
Yeah, but I just remember seeing a few of the guys on this Jack Black thing, and I just thought, it's what in the world?
And they've actually released it as an album, and literally, and you know what? A fair play, because it's a fun way of doing it, and it's nothing that a lot of people around the world haven't been doing between themselves, but for them to actually go, we're not bothered, because we realise that people know that we've recorded this on iPhones. There's obviously a bit of nip and tuck and some tweaks in there, but they've literally gone, okay, we can do this from home with what we just have around us, and why not put it out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's quite. I mean, in saying that, we were talking about yesterday in one of the sessions. We were talking about the music from Pandemic, and I'm not going to put it all down because you've been doing some great stuff. But,
still going.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, exactly. I've been lucky enough. I think I've had 4 albums, not personal, but 4 albums that I've done last year have been released by now. So it's like, I think I was more productive last year sitting at home than I was when you have to go in the studio, and then you've got to wait for the guy to mix it, and then you've got to wait. It's like now I had a guy from the States. Yeah, it's great. The ending, and he was literally texting me, we're on Messenger, and he's like, the ending. And I said, give me just a second. I was sitting here. I plugged in the bass, pulled up his track on my Logic, and did a different ending, quickly did it, boop, 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 sent it to him while we're still talking. And he goes, oh, that's perfect, mate. I was like, okay. It was like,
and it's done.
I just got paid for texting. Like, this is like,
it's but and like it is productive. I mean, I can't actually believe how many songs that we've actually written and how much better I've got it at the actual programs that I use just by using them constantly every day and doing the stuff. But it's the good thing about this kind of technology now is, like you say, you don't have to spend the time getting to the studio. You don't have to spend the time waiting on this and that. You can work remotely. You can write a guitar line and send someone a dry track, or it's a bass track, a dry track. They can put whatever amp they want on it once it's.
There's a guy in Belgium that I'm working with right now, Belgium, and he basically sent me like 10 acoustic guitar tracks, and he said, do whatever you want to do. So I did a couple of them. I just looped because they were the same repetitive thing. I did a loop, or I did whatever, and I sent him back to him. He's like, this is great. And all of a sudden there's money in my bank account. I'm like,
more of this, please.
I didn't do anything, it wasn't, but it's what it is. I mean, there's the good and the bad, just like when we were doing it before. Now, we're all starving to play live again, because we do get we are all egotists in that sense. We all like to do it. I mean, you with the hair going and the guitar, me, even just the jazz gigs. I mean, I love them. I miss them all, because I was playing a jazz gig on one night, a rock gig. I was doing a Prince tribute for a while, and you just go, this is great. And then all of a sudden you realize, wow, there's nothing.
No.
Yeah.
It's that interaction, isn't it, between just having the people in that room, whether you're playing or whether you're a punter out there, whether you're rammed in like a sardine in a sweaty crowd. I don't think people realize how much they'd miss it until it was taken away. For us, the people that play it, it's a different feeling, because to me, there's still nothing better than being out there and looking at a load of people and going, okay, this is going to be great.
I mean, I love doing the session work, but I mean, I'm like a live junkie, because you're a ham anyway. I'm a ham, and I don't mind it. And all of a sudden I've got a load of clothes I can't wear anywhere. Well, I can, but it looks a little weird to rock out at the Little. So it's like, hey man, but you just wonder, like, people like Billy Idol, what do they look like when they go into they're just in a t-shirt and jeans now, like.
So clean up on aisle 4. We've got some funky shit in there.
Yeah, exactly. We have to be careful saying that, because Billy might actually be working at Little, like doing the stocking. I mean, what the people I know, I mean, too, but loads of people I know, some great bass players. And I was saying, oh, I've done this, and he writes, plays guitar and plays bass, and he sent me some tracks to put bass on, and I said, really? And he said, oh yeah. He said, it's so much better to have other people do it while I'm producing. I said, great. So I ended up doing probably 5 or 6 songs for him last year, and finally I said, so what else has been going on? He goes, oh, the reason I don't get to you till 8 o'clock at night is I'm a Tesco driver. And I mean, I didn't even fathom that, but I forgot that his whole world is touring. Like, in your head, you kind of feel like, well, I'm doing this, other people must be doing it. I mean, I don't even feel like I'm doing it at the level I could be. And these guys have always been talking about, you see them on the road with all their recording kit. And I thought, he's got to be doing that. Oh no, I'm a Tesco driver. I was like, wow.
I think people just have had to adapt where they can, haven't they, to keep the,
we have to. I mean, I've gone and done the odd warehouse gig lately. It's quite fun. I say fun, that sounds really weird, but one of the warehouse gigs before Christmas, my wife and I were like, I should probably just, see if we can make money anywhere for a little bit and see what happens. So, because Christmas just dies, nobody's spending money. And I got this gig, and they're like, yeah, it's 4 a.m. until noon. I was like, what? What time is it? And
that's
my wife says, yeah, well, my wife just goes, but aren't you used to be awake during those hours? I'm like, yeah, that's true. Why don't I just do that? No, it was 4 a.m. until like 1, I just thought, but it was fun. It was a couple of weeks. And then they come up to you and they're like, man, you're great. You guys are doing a great job. I'm like, oh, thanks. He goes, it's done. We won't need you after Monday. And you're like,
so
okay.
Basically, I think a lot of musicians have had to sort of diversify and get their skills into different areas, haven't they, during the situation? Because their money maker, basically their bread and butter, has been taken out of the mix, really, hasn't it? With no shows and
yeah.
Well, the ones that haven't been doing remote recording, yeah. So
well, that's it. I mean, I'm an old dog with, thank God, a few new tricks, but I mean, I wouldn't know what to do, what else to do. I mean, I've worked in a lot of other businesses over my life because, music's not always the most stable. But here it's even weirder. It's just weird because well, I'm the alien, aren't I? The legal alien living in the UK. So, you can't just run out because they go, oh, what experience do you have? 30 years of bass playing. It's like, what am I good for any, I could work at Nespresso.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a Spinal Tap moment. Like I could work yeah, that hat looks wonderful on you. It's like,
there's another side to it as well, because like my CV for quite similar in ways to yours. It's like that when you do apply for something, it might be just a stopgap job, and there's nothing wrong with that, but what I find when you do, they look at your CV and they literally look at it and they think, well, this guy was going to be here until the pandemic ends, and he's going to leave to do what he used to do before. And well, yeah, but
and it's fair enough. I mean, I have a hard time because I feel like if I get in a job, I'm either going to like that job and I'll want to keep doing it, because there's a part of me that like feels bad letting somebody down. So it's like, I've really got this tour they want me on. Well, I could work Thursday mornings from 9 to 6. Like.
Yeah, and you got to understand, that when someone takes somebody on, they've got to invest a lot of time and money into that person, whether it be training, uniforms, things like that. So it's.
Oh yeah.
I totally.
Well, I think it's. I mean, I think it's interesting that they've taken our term. I mean, it's not our term, but this whole thing everywhere in the world now, there's the gig economy, which basically means I, as an employer, only have to hire you for a few hours and I don't care. So there's no insurance. I mean, the tax over here, I've done my first taxes this year. So it's very confusing compared to the US, where we can do loads of like write-offs and everything you do counts towards something. Here, it's like, that's too much. You're like, but it's what I did, and then they pay you back your tax money if you haven't worked enough. It's very, a lot of weirdness, but yeah, the job thing it's just what it is.
I think you just have to adapt.
Yeah.
What I found is like, and I've spoken to work coaches and things like that through it, and I've took advice here and there, and I've done a lot of courses added to my CV, doing a lot of free courses and things like that, which are available for you when you speak to the people that put you in the right direction to find them, But like with this podcast, for example, that came from an idea and literally a work coach going, do that. We'll support back yourself. Do you keep releasing the songs, start your podcast, get back into your sort of SEO knowledge and that kind of stuff, and we're happy for you to, bet on yourself for a bit until this is all over. And exactly. I found it really inspiring, to be honest. It's been really supportive and cool. But yeah, we'll get there at some point. I think it's going to be a long while till we see people back in a filled room, or how they're going to do it.
Well, I laugh because there's people on the threads on the internet are like, oh, I've gotten called for my first gig this summer, and it's like, yeah, but we all got called for gigs in January. We all got called gigs in December and November, and every time it's been sorry. So I mean, I used to be. I mean, you've always kind of probably known me as the guy who is looking forward and trying to find that what's gonna click. I want to be part of that. And in the pandemic, I don't get depressed, or I'm not that guy. But at the same time, I'm taking things at face value now, not the way I used to. It used to be, hey man, there's this gig that would be okay, great, and I would go and work on the material and just kind of have it, and then it would be like, either you didn't get it or it's not happening.
Well, we had bookings that we were looking at doing together, didn't we? And they all got they all got binned.
I mean, it was we literally started talking last December, January. No, last 2 years ago now. Yeah. And it was like, oh yeah, that we'll do that. Oh yeah, I'm in. Well, I mean, I do a bit of the tribute circuit, which is great, but it's funny because some guys do one tribute. I'm the guy they call when, hey man, can you come do the Prince thing? Can you do the Queen thing on Friday? Can you, So I was like, I had 4 or 5 bass players that were moving up the ladder that were calling me going, I've got loads of stuff for you. So last summer I had already like penciled in loads and was doing some stuff. I've got there's a rock band I'm working with called the TR5s. And we put out a couple of tracks, covers, and I've been producing them and recording them. And then we've got an offer from a record label to do a vinyl. They'll print the vinyl and do a couple of tunes. Now we just need to have the time to get in and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was, the diversity side, the recording is part of, for me, is the diversity. I never thought I would be doing that. I did it in Nashville when I had my basement, and it was a studio in I didn't understand the idea that I don't need a mixing board. That confused me.
It's mad. It's in the box now. It's in the box.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. I mean, I even love, I do the thing where I've got my tablet up on one side with the faders, and I'm like, this is really cool.
Yeah, I should do that actually. I should do that just for.
Oh, it's good. It's really fun to do the dual screen thing is what it is. I was doing like 2 and 3 screens at one time. I've cut it down, just one screen, because I get sent tracks. Somebody like you would send me the drums, the guitar, everything semi-mixed. So if you open up my Logic, it doesn't look like 50 tracks. I don't have that Jacob Collier like 287 tracks that are all this big. I've got one track that says track, then it'll say click, and then I put in the bass. And
it's easier, isn't it?
Oh, it's great.
I do like. I watched some crazy videos on this. All the production stuff. I mean, YouTube's amazing for like.
Oh yeah.
Watching like Produce Like a Pro or anything like that, and just to get those little tips. So I was watching one the other day, and there's this guy, and I think he does like mix surgery, and he dresses up like a doctor and stuff. I can't remember the name of it.
They're great.
I subscribed to his channel the other day, but he was breaking down how to get the Mutt Lange effects, and it's so funny. But it's so clever, but so funny.
Yeah.
And he's like doing, okay, how do we do the big Def Leppard, Bryan Adams, Shania Twain background vocal? Okay, we'll do this. And literally, he records himself saying, hey, where the snare is, right?
Yeah.
8 times. And then records it another 8 times. Do 8 times low hey. He'll do 8 times middle hey and 8 times high hey, right? So he's already got like 24 tracks up there just of hay, like a little block of hay.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And then he'll go in and he'll detune each one by a couple of cents and up tune. So he'll have 4 of each down by 9 cents, 4 of each up by 9 cents. Then he'll pan hard left and right because it's like that one goes left, that one goes right, and then he puts it all over the snare. So every time the snare hits, you get this massive hey. and it's like, that's cool, but I really haven't got the time to do that.
Went off. I must have an alarm set or something.
He did that, but he's like,
yeah.
But it gets back to like the old Mutt Lange thing with his stereo, isn't it? Let's not record that chord. Let's record it one string at a time.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, you love it because they do that. And then, I mean, I've luckily been in the studio with Mutt Lange, and you're in that. I was in Nashville recording, and you've got Mutt Lange producing, but you've got the co-producers that really run the band. I mean, not always, but with us, it was like the co-producer. We never even knew who was doing the track. And, again, nowadays it can be sent to you on the internet and you go, wow, that's what I played on. That sounds amazing. These albums I did last year, I played with guitar tracks. I had one that the guy played acoustic guitar. I didn't hear anything. When I got it back, it was like gospel choir. And, I'm like, this is great. But back then you didn't get a copy of the tape at the end of the track. It was like, that's on so-and-so's album. Oh,
better go and buy it.
yeah. It's like, all right. Yeah, we had, but yeah, so, that whole thing, that would be 3 or 4 days of Mutt doing something. Now it's like, and I don't even know why the guy did a track each for that. Usually most people nowadays do 1 track of each and then just copy hits and then do everything,
Yeah.
So
There is, and when I do it, I'm kind of, I'm always fighting myself to go, well, that verse is good. I'll just copy that and use that guitar part. I always try and play a different one, you know, because it is so easy to go like, oh, there's a chorus, I'll record a chorus. There's a verse, I'll record a verse. There's a bridge. Okay, chop, 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 copy paste, crossfade, song done. But I try and record it so because at least I know, if nobody else does, that second chorus, that second verse is a different recording to the first one. So what are you? Well, what are you using to track then, gear wise?
Software wise, or what do you mean? Gear wise? Oh, everything. I've got. I kind of right at the end of your tenure, I got into. I wanted to buy some Fenders, or I wanted to buy something like a Fenders, and we were in LA and for the NAMM show, and one of the guys at Yamaha said, you know what I've got? I've got one of the old Blazer P basses. And I went, oh yeah, that old 80s stuff. So I started digging in and I realized that there's a whole era that I didn't really pay attention to because I had the jazz bass and the P bass, but not always a fan. I was always a fan of all the more technical, crazy stuff.
You're the first guy in the UK to get a 7-string, weren't you? 7-string bass.
That's somewhere. Mostly people want to hear P basses or jazz basses.
Yeah.
You know, that's become the thing, hasn't it? If you watch every rock band, they're all going back to the old 70s style.
Yeah, you still see quite a few music mans as well, didn't you? But that's in the same boat, really, isn't it?
And that's one of those basses I never really enjoyed the sound of. It's sad. I enjoy hearing people play it, and I go, wow, they get a great sound, but I never did it. I was more of a jazz and a P bass guy. So what I've done is I've ended up collecting Ibanez and Tokai P and J's from the 70s. Yeah. So I'll grab it. I actually have a P bass. You can see.
Yeah.
No name on the headstock. It's a 1970s Ibanez, but it's originally from the Fujigen factory.
Right. Okay.
And supposedly the guy I got it from in the States, this was one of the ones Leo Fender turned down to let them build the basses.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you know, the mojo on it is that it had some actual Leo on it, but it sounds great. I got it in the mail, and I never was a massive P bass fan, and I played it and I went, why have I never won one of these? You know, so
it can just be that particular one, can't it? Because I'm the same with Strats and Tellys. You know, it's like you sometimes just the last one I got from a store. It was when I was looking after Mom. Actually, was pushing the wheelchair around in Mary Hill Centre. There was a music shop there which had a Fender dealership in there, and literally, I just by walking past and feeling the back of a neck, that's all I did. I was like, I like that, and then it ended up being my favourite Strat. And it was just, that's all it took. I just put my hand on the back of the neck and I was like, hey, wow, okay. You know.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. This came and, you know, I wanted it to say Ibanez on it because that's, you know, how it was being sold. But again, it goes back to the made in Japan stuff. So all the tags have the made in Japan. The Tokai stuff I picked up one of the early 79, 78 fretlesses that they made. And I've had them over the years. You buy it, you get rid of it. It's that Jocko thing for us bass players, but you know, the cheaper version. But they sound great. And so I picked it up, and I mean, it was nothing. It was super cheap. And the guy had it. It felt like it had barely been played. So it still feels almost new. And so that's been great. But the best one I've got to show, it's my favorite laugh. And I think I told you this story when I saw you at the NAMM show.
Back in the day.
In the day.
I'll put a few photos up on this. Of us at NAMM.
Well, this is the first one I got. Now you look at all the toys. All the toys are new on it. This is the first one I got. It says Ibanez. Very cool. It's very marred, very messed up. I bought it in the United States and had it shipped to the UK. which cost a couple of pennies, but it was like, whatever, it's worth it. I can't wait to get it. It looks great. My tech calls me after it gets here because I had it sent to him. He calls me and I'm heading to Madeira to do a teaching session and some recording. So on my YouTube channel, there's a version of just the two of us and another song, Room 335, the Carlton song that I did with the teachers at the university. We do it on the rooftop of the place. It's great. But I got this bass. The tech calls me and he goes, Eric, the bass came. And I said, great. I said, to open it up, let me know. I don't want to open it till you get here. And I said, okay. He said, I said, yeah. So it came in a gig bag, right? And he goes, yeah. I went, okay. And he goes, with the address sticker on it. It came from Texas to Southampton
in a gig bag
with literally my name stuck on the address stuck on the outside. It had a little bit of like bubble wrap in it, but I was like, so I grab it from him. I'm heading out to Madeira. I grab it. And now at this point, I knew it was coming. So I ordered a badass bridge I'm a massive 80s fan. So all of my bridges on my jazzes are the badass. And I love the chrome crazy stuff. So I throw the badass bridge on it. Now I open it up. It looks fine. It looks exactly the way it does right now. Had the original pickups in it and the original tuners, and I had a hip shot waiting. So I used the hip shots on all my 4 strings. Yeah. Massive fan of those. Because you
D-tuner.
Yeah, the D-tuner. That's why the D-tuner on your EVH, EVH. I never, my Lysticsia just kicked in. So I just like, okay. I throw a set of strings on it. I put some DRs on it. I put the badass bridge on it. I set it up on the way to Madeira. I do the session. I haven't done anything to it since except the badass bridge and adding the bell and the hip shot. Other than that, it's exactly the way it came out of the gig bag. So
it's obviously pretty stable if it's made it that many miles.
It stays in tune. The detuner is always where it needs to be. So yeah, but again, I mean, you're going to buy a 70s Fender for a couple of grand, and this came out of 74. It looks exactly like all of them, built right off the specs, and it stays in tune and it plays great.
It's a perfect.
So you can't really argue. No, they're good. They're all good toys. They're all good toys.
I'll show you something that'll make you laugh now. I'll show you my tracking bass. Hold on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Is that the Epiphone one or the Gibson one?
It's the Epiphone. But where's the knobs?
Oh yeah. Was that the Nicky 6 one or whatever?
Yeah, it's just got a kill switch.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no knobs. It's just
mate, is your bass on? Click. Yeah, that's on.
But the one sound it's got is great. It's really.
Oh yeah.
And do you know what? It's particularly good as well for if I'm recording just a dry DI bass track. It's always a great signal. It's just nice and fat and it works. I mean, it's got this kind of weird thing for your little finger, apparently, that he uses. That's there, but it's literally just got one knob on it. But yeah, it's the Epiphone 6. But as a tracking bass, it's great. It's got Gibson pickups in it. It's got deep 6 ones in it. Yeah. Yeah,
they always sound great. I mean, I have to say, I was really lucky. Oh,
it's all right. I'll be back.
You're fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my bass up while you're.
Yeah.
He's back.
That was the Nicky 6 bass whacking the table, and then literally the camera went whoop. Wow. Too much rock for the camera.
I think it's because you called it a knob, but that's beside the point.
Yeah. That's the only bass I've used for doing all the recording because literally it's all right. It's got one sound, but because I run it through mainly Helix, I've got lots of different textures I can do with it. So as long as it gets me a good consistent signal, I'm happy.
Well, I got into the thing last year where the studio guy in me kicked in as the bass player. And, you know, so I've got the P bass, which tends to be when I do tracks for somebody, I'll do a jazz bass and a P bass, exactly the same. And I'll send them both tracks and go, which one do you want? 9 times out of 10, they pick the P bass. I don't know why, it just happens. But I do use the BTB 1405 that you graciously gave me as my first bass from your side.
Yeah.
And I still have that. That's probably my favorite bass. And part of it's because of the Kerry Nordstrand pickups.
Yeah.
You know, that was the first series of the BTBs they did them on. And I loved them. And all of my P basses and 2 of my jazz basses are all Nordstrand pickups. Kerry was gracious enough to get me all the toys and make sure I had them. And I have to say, that made the difference for me. The sound is just phenomenal. It sounds original, but it's clean. You don't have that fuzziness that you maybe get from some of the old vintage stuff, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever tried any of the? Because I know when we got together with doing the Ibanez and Laney stuff, that they were actually trying a few different things out with the bass range when they were expanding, trying some different shapes, trying some different. Like,
yeah.
And you were a champion for those, really, the sort of more modern stuff.
Well, yeah, actually, it's funny when you say that because Ben, I won't think of his last name all of a sudden, is like he's still the guy playing. If you remember the GT 105 and 104 and 106, it was that jazz bass with that really funky round body.
Yeah.
And it was one of the ones I wanted, but you like only had like 2 and you were like, well, maybe when we get more in, and they've gone away. But it's funny because I quite like them. Yeah, I went through a whole period. I got some of the Ergodynes. I picked up, you know, in my Ibanez quest.
Terra Firma.
But well, it's really funny because I had an original Affirma back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
When Ralph originally did it. And it was a 5-string. And I liked it, but it was a bit skinny or thin for me. And it's the same. The SRs, I love the SRs, but I find them really thin. I kind of like that chunk. The BTB, I mean, you sent me that BTB 1405. I did that thing for Music Radar. Yeah. And I had an SR, the acoustic, and the BTB, and there was a TRX or whatever that was kind of like an old Roadstar. Yeah. And I remember taking the BTB to a session in London and thinking, I really hate this body design. I just don't think it's and I played it and went, this is the best bass. This is it. You know, I mean, this is like, it was weighted. It felt comfortable. It has a Fendery vibe in the sense that the strap puts you right where it needs to be for the right level. And that's why I said the 1405, it just sticks out. It seems to be the active bass I use for everything. Yeah. But I also blame Kerry. I think Nordstrand just does an amazing pickup. So, but yeah, in saying that, go ahead.
Did you try any of the fan fret stuff?
Yeah, I did. And I think you and I had this conversation at NAMM. And I think actually Mike Taff was in on this conversation because it was right when they found out they could no longer call it the SRF. They had to start calling it an SMS.
Multi-scale.
Yeah. Scale, yeah. Because the SRFF fan fret was owned by Novak's Guitars, which in turn is owned by Sheldon Dingwalt. And I have to say, Sheldon and I have been friends for a long time. And I think I told you, I went over to see Sheldon and he walked over to me and he goes, did you have anything to do with them making a fan fret? And I went, no. Actually, they play great. I did see, I think it's Thundercat has a fan fret BTB, which is a one-off. And that's the only bass I wish they maybe would have done it in, because the SR is great, but it's just the body shape.
Yeah, it's not for you.
See, no, it's not mine. And I can't even figure out why, because I used to love the SRs. That was actually, I mean, the SR, I had a 505 that we did. And I love that bass. I used it on everything. It was Bartolini's, it was everything. And then it was literally just that BTB. As soon as I put it on, I just went, why have I never played this?
Yeah,
You know?
it's the thing with the Ibanez are really cool at picking that, putting a lot of research time into styling and body shapes and ergonomics.
Oh yeah.
Where you look at it on a shelf and think that's really really weird, but as soon as it's in the playing position, it's the best
Yeah.
thing. It's every little detail's thought out, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's
Oh yeah.
you
Well,
know,
they're the new fan frets, which are the EHBs, I think.
yeah,
They're the headless, and people are talking. They're getting raved. I mean, Sweetwater put the fifth. It was the 1506 in the top 10 best bases of last year.
right.
You know, I mean, you know, price range 1,200, 1,500. It's still inexpensive for that, because if you get a Dingwall, you're talking about 1,800 for a used one,
Yeah,
and that's if you're lucky. Most of them are $2,000, and when we talk about that, that's the Nolly models, the bolt-on basic. You get into the, I mean, I had an original Z6, the first one he ever made, and I mean, touch wood, I was lucky what I paid for it and what it really cost. But I think that thing's like $7,000 now.
madness.
You know, so yeah, Ibanez has done it, but of course now you've got Court has taken the. I mean, between you and I, we know they're all made in the same like
Factory
1 mile block,
Yeah.
which is the factory. But Court came out with the SR single cutaway base body with the fan frets. And I thought that was quite a cool concept, and they've done well with that, you know. But Court stepped up in the business too. They all have. If you're an inexpensive company that makes somewhat cheap stuff and easy to get for the youngsters, you're making money. Last year, I mean,
I was looking last night because I'm still a complete gear nerd, and I literally will just sit for hours looking at stuff. I mean, the big sort of online retailers in the UK, let's pick Gear for Music, for example.
Yeah.
With their own guitar brand. And okay, it's, you know, it's either a Gear for Music or it's a Sub-Zero, but if you look at you can actually go in, because they've obviously got big buying power with these factories direct. And if you look at that, you can get a multi-scale headless guitar or bass with a roasted maple neck of their brand for like 240 quid.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
with insane specs, it's like the Harley Benton stuff.
The Harley Benton stuff, you know. I mean, and you know how that all started out. You were there. I mean, or you weren't there, but I mean, basically, Thomann was a warehouse for every company in the world.
Yeah.
And then they started going, well, we have a music store that we're connected to. So not only are we going to be the Fender, Ibanez, Gibson, blah 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 warehouse for Europe, we're also going to start selling the stuff. Well, it was easy for them because they could hang one of everything on the wall, and somebody comes in and goes, oh yeah, I like that one. All right, we have one new in a box. And they went across the street to a warehouse and pulled it out. And then they would just pay each company as they did it. So they had the perfect deal. We're going to put all the stuff in your warehouse, and if you sell it, just pay us. Okay. Yeah. You know, and then the Harley Benton stuff. I mean, yeah, they've got a 51 style P bass that is going for 90 quid.
Yeah, I saw it.
You know, I mean, I had a 51 style Squire S thing. It had a different neck on it, but it was great body. And I just wanted to get rid of it. I wasn't using it. Well, I couldn't sell it for more than a Harley Benton's selling for, because who's going to buy a used bass when you can buy that, you know? And it should, well, funny enough, that's one of the basses. And there's 2 guitars I think they still have. There's more than that really look great, but it's under the 100-pound limit, so you still have to pay for shipping.
Right. Well, do you know what?
So it's like
the way I look at it,
5 strings.
Yeah. The way I look at it, though, if you like, in what I've been doing for the last sort of 9 months, I'm lucky enough to have got to a position over the years where I've literally bought things along the way, and I've got my tools as a palette. You know, if you need a Les Paul, there's a Les Paul. You know, it's like
exactly.
But for someone that's making a living doing remote recording and needs a certain tool for a task, why wouldn't you just go, I need a 335 type thing? Well, yeah. I'll get a Harley Benton for like 150 quid and change.
Oh yeah. Well, it's
that vibe, isn't it? You can still get a tele. You need a tele type vibe. You can get one for 90 quid. You know, and if you want to put the time into the setup, which from what I hear, they're set up pretty well.
Oh yeah. Well, I was going to say there's a guy, Miles Grindy, that I did his album last year, and he's got a YouTube site, and he was a massive Ibanez guy. He's got one of the roasted, fingerboard neck, one of
the AZs.
Yeah, one of the AZs, and it sounds great because he's got all the great, all the great stuff here, all the plugins. The song that I'm on, it's an all pretty much instrumental album, and I'm doing fretless, and he's playing, that rock guitar thing, that it just sounds great, and it's hilarious because he used that, and he used a Harley Benton on it, the Harley Benton headless. And he ordered it, and he thought, I'll get it, because he really liked the, what is it? The Sandbergs?
Strandbergs.
There's Strandberg guitars and Sandberg basses. I get confused. The Strandberg, he really wanted one. And basically, it's exactly that guitar. And all he did is, I think he changed the pickups in it, which he ordered the pickups that were the upgrades, and you just get them in a box with it, and it's all plugged now, like EMGs. It's all,
it's just a connector.
Unscrew it, plug it in. You don't have to rewire or solder anything like we used to. Yeah. I'm buying these 70s basses. I have to do all the work. It's like, it used to be so easy. But that's it. The Harley Benton stuff, they've just come out with a whole rung of amps, and the bass amp is getting raved. Their little tiny bass amp as one of the coolest things you can buy, because it's got a USB out, it's got all the things on it that you can do remote recording, and when it's time to play live, it's live.
Are you using amps to record at the moment?
Actually, you'll have a really good laugh, because you and I were part of this whole process.
So and that's good. That's pro.
You were there. I want to show you, but what I might have to do is move the camera down.
Yeah, don't worry.
But actually, it's quite good, because I can show you a couple of things. I use the Kerry Nordstrand Starlifter as one of my preamps that I love. And again, Kerry's just been a great friend and a great guy. He's brilliant. They make these crazy things that I use on my basses. The Nordstrand bass mutes.
Right, okay.
And that gets that thuggy sound, and they do different woods, and it's quite nice. But that's one thing. But yes, there's an amp that I was happily brought into Laney to have some input on, and I am very lucky to say that I still use it. I use the Mini, though, which you weren't there when I got the Mini, but
the SLS.
The SLS 500, and it's amazing. And I'm going to do this. Let's see if this works. See everything.
Yep.
So I've got the Laney SLS Nexus small head, which is great because it's got the octave and chorus and everything built in. So I've got some natural effects that I can use if I want. There's Kerry's deal, which is brilliant. And then over here for the live sound, I mic up the Laney SLS 112 cab.
All right, cool.
So yes, I'm still a Laney lover. And that story, actually, in saying that, I also have an amp sitting up here that I use to mic, which is my Promethean Ibanez 110. It's the same one I sent you 10 years ago.
Yeah, because you couldn't get it fixed, could you? Because
I brought it over.
Continued it, and you brought it with you.
Yeah. I brought it with me because it was one of the things Ibanez gave me in the States when I really loved it, because it was just a great little amp. And what's funny is I've gone through the whole thing. I owned 3 of them. I owned all the extension cabinets. I've done everything lately, and then sold it and just kept the single 10. But I still have the 210 and 15 Nexus cabs. So I've still got all of that, and I've still got one of the 1000s, the SOS Studio Live, that I use for my live gigs. So I still love the Laney stuff. And this cab, I have to say, I mic it up with the Sontronics DM mics, and it just sounds huge. It gets that real old Ampeg sound, especially when you're using old basses. But it's great because it's got, I'll do my selling routine for 2 seconds, not really, but I use it direct out. So I do a DI out of it.
Yeah.
And I do the mic. So I'm getting the split signal. And the other nice thing is when this all started, I had no idea how to record. I remembered, wait, there's a USB out on the Laney. So I went and plugged in the mini head. And that's actually how I did my first tracks, because I had no idea what an interface was. I was like,
well, it can be your interface, can't it? You know, that's
yeah. And it's great because you can reamp with it too, as you know. It's like you can do the two plugs in if you want. So in a sense, it was my early plug-in. I like figured out how to do everything with it. But now I'm off to a lot of stuff. I mean, I mostly that's how I go direct in. I like to mic. I did a video on my YouTube channel of basically talking about how Carol Kay and the upright players in LA used to do the double tracking. So there'd be electric bass and double bass playing the exact same thing. So I've done a thing with the band TR5s where I did the tracks are all recorded double bass and electric. So you get that, you know, so it's quite cool.
That's a cool system, man. It's like,
yeah.
With me recording, I don't really get I don't think Lucy would really be too chuffed with me or the neighbours if I started miking up my tube amps. But
well, that's it, you know.
I've just found that I use the Helix stuff anyway for gigging when we were, because obviously we're working with a duo when I've got a backing track and live vocal. So I've got bass and drums and keys on a backing track that using the Helix works great, so I can go straight into the desk and be in that mix with it.
Exactly.
You know, and it works great, but for recording it's a godsend because there's that many options. But I'm very sort of hard on myself with, I don't tend to record dry tracks anymore. I'm old school.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spend 3 weeks.
Well, that's it.
And
reamping and finding a plug-in.
You know what I mean? And having too many options. What I tend to do is I'll get the tone that I really like and I'll print it. And I'll be like, okay, there might be a little bit of EQ that I do later. Mainly it's just an Easy Mix plugin by Randy Staub, which I really love, called Guitar EQ, and all that does.
Oh, nice.
It's just one plugin, and it takes away what you don't want and puts a bit more into what you do want, and that's it. You know, that's my guitar tracking system. And then same on the bass. I use a Randy Staub preset on the bass, so we'll record maybe using an Ampeg. Or there's a really good setting that we've been using. It's because Billy Sheehan had his old Pierce preamp.
Yes.
Modeled into Helix because he wanted to use. It was old and it was from the 80s, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was great. I had one of those. They were great preamps.
Yeah, well, it's in the Helix. He basically on YouTube he took it to line 6 and they modeled it and put it in the Helix, and they give you that for free as an update. So we've actually used the Sheehan.
That's good, right? And it's very crispy. It's very crispy. It's got some nice edge to it.
It is. It's quite a strange sound, really, but it sits in a mix.
Yeah.
Really good. But even on that, the only thing on bass I'll do is I'll literally use a Randy Staub setting, which is bass room compression, dial to taste.
Yeah.
That's it. You know, I try and steer clear of too many options. I mean, just because they're all there doesn't mean you have to use them. You know what I mean?
No. Well, it was a bit like miking the amps. I contacted Sontronics mics. Funny enough, right before lockdown really happened, it had nothing to do with recording. They have a couple of great mics. The DM for bass drum is also bass amps and double bass. And I was looking to be able to go to some studios of my mates with a miking system so that I had a good setup.
Yeah.
And so as soon as everything kicked in, and all the Sontronics stuff is basically handmade, you know. So when you order one, they might say, have it out tomorrow. Oh, it's going to take a month because we've got to get 2 more parts in and we got to build it. So a couple things had to be built, and then they sent it to me, and I had gone through loads of plugins trying to find some bass sounds. Mm-hmm. And I was using the Nexus head, and all of a sudden the mic came, and I just put it in front of the SLS 112, and I went, oh, that's it. So yeah, I mean, the bad thing is I live in flats too, so it's not like the neighbors probably love me, but I try to work the studio like it's the business. So I try to only work between 10 in the morning and 4 when I'm doing that stuff. If I'm doing the computer stuff, you can do it whenever with the headphones.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
I live in. I'm in a detached house, but still,
yeah.
I also realise how loud I need stuff to get my tone, and that's not going to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the saturation side. Well, that Miles.
The power amp needs to be used, man. So,
well, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is if you underpower it, it's not good for it anyway, is it? I mean, you don't take out your big tube amp for a quick practice session.
I just hate the sound of, like, when people are really drive a preamp really hard and get fizzy and don't turn it up. It's a give and take between the power amp and the preamp. The power amp gives you the balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Van Halen 1 wouldn't sound as good as it was unless the power amp wasn't on 10.
Exactly. Well, that's it. I mean, it's just about finding the tones. That's why, I mean, the 12 is great. I use the 110 Promethean once in a while. When I first started it, I didn't really know how to make the headphones and everything work because I had my laptop. I was saying to you, and I got an inexpensive, recording program. Well, I was going through my mate's mixer to hear things and one channel to record. Like, I had 10 cables going into one interface thing. Like, is this working? And it would be like if you tapped your laptop, like, sorry, you don't have any plugin. What do you mean? But I did that, went through a lot of plugins, and then I started realizing, but I had the 210 and the 15 up for a while in the corner.
Yeah.
And that's how I heard the bass as I was recording it. I don't really know why. It was just like, I'm plugged into the 1000-watt head. I may as well use the whole rig. Well, I'm in here going, doom, 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 doom. That's all you can hear because I got it.
Well, the other side of it, there's me, like, creating, like, my dream rig, but actually only using models of the real stuff I've actually got, because I do that.
Oh, yeah.
It's because
it's great, isn't it?
Because I've got a reference for it.
Yeah.
I mean, even down to impulse responses, I purchased the Celestion official impulse responses of the speakers that I have in my cabs because
you know what it does.
I know what it does, and it's so all I really do is recreate what I can do in physical, I recreate in digital, if you get me.
Yeah.
With exactly the same things.
No. I mean, and I probably would do more of that if I was doing more of the production side. When I'm producing, I tend to use a few things. The few tracks I produced last year, I used some of the plugins. I mean, of course, for vocals and a lot of other stuff. But I had such the nicest. I did this thing with the TR5s, and I took all of the stuff that you've just seen. I took the EIEs and all of that, and Sontronics was, and they are, lovely people down here in Bournemouth area, all handmade in the UK, great mics. They set me up with every mic I needed for a full drum kit.
Wow.
For vocals. I mean, I've got overheads and I've got one of their STS2s and the 30s. They just sorted me out. It was great. Anything I needed shipped right to me. They were great. So I went in and we just recorded the whole band. And then I brought it back here and I did it. And we sent it for the mastering to Peter in London. And I said, look, it's the first time I had ever done anything fully on, Logic. Like you said, you're learning, you're tweaking. I was trying to find, plugins that I liked, but I'm an old school guy too, where I don't want too much overkill. I want it to sound really as good as it can right off the bat. And I sent it to him and he said, yeah, I can have this in a couple of days, mastered. I went, okay. So he was doing the stuff and he called me and he goes, could you send me the vocal track without anything on it? I went, oh yeah, is it bad? And he went, no, everything's exactly where it should be. He said, when I listen to it through my speakers, it sounds like a live band playing. He said, but if I can get it natural, I can double some things and give you some bigger vocal sound. I went, oh, because I hadn't even thought about how to do that, playing with it, but still trying to when I record a band and when I produce a band, the engineer usually is the guy going, oh yeah, we should try this. Oh yeah, okay, good. Show me what you think it should be, and usually they're right because I don't always know all the toys that are available. But this guy sent it back and it sounded great. And we've been getting loads of plays on loads of the internet radio stations for the like, rockabilly, cavern clubby kind of stuff. And the guys that send the information back to DJs, I'm always freaked out because I'm just like, oh, I did something good.
well,
So
through modern technology, we could actually put a little bit of the video directly into this podcast.
Well, exactly. Well, we've got a couple of the videos aren't as good as the stuff. We did some lockdown videos with the band, which were hilarious because God love our drummer. He's a young kid and he lives in a place where he can't play the drums. So he brings his snare into the bedroom and he like just kind of taps it. And I've got like my double bass. So I'm like, yeah, the guitar players we're all doing our bits, vocalist, and the vocalist works for BBC in the automation area. So she does all kinds of stuff. So she takes the videos into work and turns them into these colorful, crazy things. But I'll send you some links anyway, because I'm sure you'll want some toys to put up with whatever.
Yeah, I was like, when I put some photos up from us at NAMM as well. Well, speaking of which, I really, really miss the trade show.
Oh, yeah, sorry, we got to get to that because
but I'm pretty sure everybody misses the trade shows now. And is there a future for it, for that model? When's it going to, can it get
I think it was not a great reception for the virtual, this year. But a lot of the companies that I spoke to, my mates that were artist relations and things like that, they really liked it because they didn't spend $5,000 a day. We know what it costs. It's $500. It's $500 to have the carpet cleaned at your booth.
It's astronomical. In fact, it's actually unrealistic massively. And I think a lot of the people on the guitar pages on YouTube, whatever, in their channels, really don't understand the costs involved in putting that trade show on. And how
that's the thing is
how broken the model is, that you can't do that yourself. We need a union guy to do that, and he needs to call that guy, and you need to pay this much just to put a power strip in and things like that.
They also don't seem to realize. I mean, when you were with Laney and Ibanez took care of a lot of the heavies that come in and do things. The year that I was there with you and I played with Peter Erskine when they brought out his drum set. And I walked over and we brought the Laney amp over, and of course the two guys from Ibanez are like, "Can you not use the Promethean?" And you're okay. So I had like a Laney next to a Promethean. It's like we'll do it both. But nobody seems to realize they walk by a booth, somebody like Peter Erskine's playing, or you've got Steve Vai, or you've got anybody standing in that room. I mean, you used to bring loads of guys in, and there's some of us that were there and it was, we'll take care of your room and food. And then there's other artists that live in LA and they don't leave the house unless they get paid. So people don't realize that ticket that they pay for, or the free pass they get from their music store mates, is barely paying for anything. The guys selling flutes and reeds over in the other area are making no money. They're barely getting by to show off their reeds and hope that one guy comes and buys a year's supply. I mean, you guys are putting money up for artists to come in, and that's the beginning of it. 6 months from the show, is there any way we can get Steve to walk by the booth and play a few notes? And I'm not saying Vi and Gilbert and all those guys, none of those guys are big-headed, crazy, they're not asking for millions, but you and I both know there are guys that ask for a lot to do it. I mean, Dean Markley back in the day, we used to have, at one point, Dean Markley had everybody. We had Steve Vai, Neil Schon, every guitar player. We had every bass player you could name. Rob was there from Metallica. We'd have, Smash Mouth would come by, just everybody, But the thing was, it was like, the guys from Korn live in LA, but Dean Markley would have to get them a hotel room for the night.
Yeah.
In Anaheim, and it's like, come on, guys, like I lived in Nashville, and in the Nashville show, I drove 45 minutes in to do the show every day, and yes, I was getting paid to be there for a whole different reason, but it's like, oh yeah. And the hotel rooms, come on. I mean, Anaheim.
Yeah.
if there's any place in the world that lost money this year, it was Anaheim, California. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, definitely.
They must have. I mean, without Disney and without the conventions.
But the other side of it is you've spoken to some brands I haven't. I'm just thinking off the top of my head on how I see it is, are these big brands that have literally not had to spend money on going to NAMM this year, and they've done their own, let's say their own internet-based video. They've done their own internet trade show on the YouTube channel.
Yeah,
they've done a video for each model that they do, or even the big retailers that haven't had to spend the money to go over there to look at the stuff. They've had the stuff sent to them earlier. You look at like Anton's channel every day. This is what's coming out of NAMM. They've already got the stock. Will they look at that and maybe it's kind of skewed as well, because people in lockdown are obviously, guitar sales are up because people are in lockdown. They're not spending money traveling anywhere. They might have cancelled their holiday. They're not going to buy a new car because they'll get fined to drive out of their county. They're buying guitars. So at the end of all this, when it comes to the balance in the books, are they going to say, right, we didn't spend money on going to NAMM, we did our own thing, and look at our sales, they're much bigger?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's weird. The UK sales numbers come out every Friday. They say, oh, last week we, didn't make as much as we did last year. And they keep doing that. And it's like, not until March 20th, the week of March 20th, are we going to actually hear a real number that makes sense? Because last year, you and I were doing a gig about this time of the year, or we were out buying it at a pub. We were spending money, the entertainment business lost 80% in the last 2 weeks of what they made last year. Of course they did. They're not open. They're not open. Where did the 20% come from?
That's like
online sales.
That's like them saying, cinema tickets are down.
Yeah, but they have said that. They have said that. I mean, just the way they explain things, you just go, no realistic concept of what it is. And I don't think we touched on it earlier about people leaving their jobs and not having jobs and changing their thing. I had this idea, not that it meant anything, but I would have loved to seen the BBC go 1 week without any music for any of their TV shows and broadcasts. Just show the broadcast. That's it. No music, no background, anything. And then I think people would understand what is missing from what's going on. I mean, I don't think, because you turn on the TV and BBC News comes on and you hear that intro, that the guy wrote, and you go, oh, the news is on. Well, what would happen if you looked at your TV and there was no sound till the guy talked, until the presenter, it's like, in the one show, same guy that wrote the BBC.
Let's get rid of the EastEnders theme tune.
Well, that's it. I mean, if you imagine that people have their TV on and they're making dinner, and all of a sudden there's no sound at 8 o'clock, and you walk out and look, and it's like, oh, it's the view of, going over the East End with the camera, showing the S through in the Thames. Oh, what happened? Where's the music? Guess what? That's exactly what we're asking.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there is music being made. I mean, Abbey Road has done some recording with distancing, and we saw last year, a bit of the Proms done with the smaller orchestra. And of course, last year, all of the events were done with the Marine bands and the Scots Guard, where they were like 6 to 8 feet apart at Buckingham Palace performing.
Yeah. So
we know it can be done. The West End, you were talking about, being in a pit. I'm used to being in a pit where I can barely move. Yeah. When I did Les Mis, there was a piece of the stage that was here. So what happened is I sat down into a chair, and if I decided I wanted to bob around, I'd hit my head, and the bass was here, and it was like, there's the music stand. And when it was time to take the break, I had to move the music stand so I could get out. Now, that's what it looks like. Imagine putting Perplex between every person in that pit and getting there. It is crazy what we're trying to think we're going to do,
Yeah.
Sorry, we got way off. That was like a whole different thing, but
that's all right. Already seen this year. Glastonbury's already cancelled. The other festivals haven't really said anything yet. I mean, I noticed yesterday that made me laugh. The Who put a statement up yesterday cancelling their tour, which would have happened in March.
Yeah.
And they've just figured out that maybe we shouldn't do it.
Well, it's funny because Pino, the bass player that was playing with the Who for a long time, of course, left the Who, and John Button's taken his place, but he left because he had too many dates. He was doing the John Mayer thing, and I think he was doing another D'Angelo thing, and it just worked out that it was going to be easier for him to do the other thing. And of course, John Button's recorded the new album with the Who, and last year it was supposed to come out. It's the only album that didn't come out. The Rolling Stones put out, Ghost Town and whatever they're going to do. Bon Jovi put out some really,
2020.
Yeah, I hate to, I said it to you earlier. I hate to be sad, but it wasn't our best year for music. It was our best year to hear that I'm in a line 6 feet from somebody wearing a mask in about 10 songs. I couldn't believe the amount of people that need to tell me this in a song instead of letting me know reality and taking me somewhere else. Come on.
That's a good point. I didn't need to hear an album about the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm living it. It's like,
well, and that's the same thing with Hagar and those guys, them doing that thing. The songs aren't about that, but it's the way it was done. But you go, oh, look, it was done in the pandemic. That's like the cream of the crop.
It's a timestamp. It's a timestamp, and years we're looking at it, and But
it was a bit like that. It was like that Soderbergh movie. Did you ever see the Soderbergh movie? It was called Timeline or something, and it intertwined all the people, and they actually filmed on their phones. All of this stuff was filmed, and you could see the time things, but it would all be the same time. So I think like Julia Roberts was like in LA doing something. Somebody was in New York. Then he gets on a plane, and it's like you never see him again because he doesn't fit into the timeline. He couldn't get there in an hour and a half. Right. He just gets on a plane, and like he's only in the film, like, oh, he's in New York at the same time. Okay, now he's out of the film. He's not going to make it, But yeah, that was that's quirky and fun, and I think that gave a positive twist to what can happen, And that's a bit like, not to put myself or the band that I'm in that situation, but all of the lockdown videos that I saw, I did a lot of jazz projects with people I never ever played with. Because a drummer said, hey, man, I got a trumpet player in LA. I got so-and-so. You want to do it? Yeah. I'm doing a rock and roll thing right now, which is going to be a video and a recording. And they're going to release the recording. But I think piano players in Texas, we're all over the world. And it's fun. That sometimes it's not all about the cash. It's about how can we turn this into something that my brain doesn't explode during. So you get to play. So it was cool for that. The lockdown videos were fun. That's all they were meant to be, But sorry, back to the NAMM shows. I think we were going to go on a different twist. I think we were going to go on some of the.
Your background's gone off.
My background's gone off. There we go. Hey, there we go.
Yeah, there we go.
But when you were like, your background's gone off, I'm like, the basses are gone? Well,
I should have said screensaver. My bad.
Yeah, that's it. Well, it's all you can do. All these crazy backgrounds. We've heard all about this cat and this lawyer last week.
That was funny. That was funny.
And it was like I was thinking about going in here and trying to find like what Gabriel's studio or one of those things and have that be the background where it's been tough, Chris. We've been I've only really had this space to work with.
I can only fit the one orchestra in here.
Yeah, we've only got the one drum room. It's been really tough, but Chester Thompson's been filling it nicely with.
So, what are you going to say about NAMM then? We've gone.
I was just going to say we got on the selling and we got on all the, but the times, the fun you have at NAMM, the people you run into randomly, the Lemmys of the world, God rest their souls.
Yeah.
But because we had a couple of good NAMMs together. You and I did a couple of NAMMs before you didn't do them, and then I had been doing them. Wow, I've been doing them since the late 80s.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, we were talking about Chicago when it used to be in Chicago.
Yeah,
and we used to go up, and you walk in, and it was like the who's who of everyone there could be. in the music world, you know. I mean, the same in LA. You walk down and you look over and you're like, oh, look, Stevie Wonder's walking around. What's Stevie Wonder looking at?
Yeah, I know.
Like, I mean, it's like Yamaha. Stevie, you got to come try out this piano. The guy hears everything. Do you think a room like NAMM is where you want to play the piano? It feels great. Can you turn it up? Actually, it was Herbie. No, it may have been Chick Corea. He's just passed away. It was either Herbie or Chick. We were at a NAMM show doing something for DW Drums, and they were next to Yamaha. And there was a load of people around this guy playing the piano. And we're like, well, I think that's Chick Corea. We walk over, and there's the poor little girl that works for Yamaha, comes over and says, I'm sorry, sir. You know, they're from Japan. I'm so sorry. The sign says you can't play it. He's got like 180 people going. You know? And it's like, and they're like, do you realize who this is? And then she just goes, but it says you cannot play this. You know, those are those NAMM things you just go, of course it is, you know.
There is some weird, there is some really like weird random stuff that happens at the strangest of places. Like I often found it quite cool where you'd see someone amazingly famous or massive in my eyes, on the smallest booth ever, and wondering why they're there or what the connection is.
The Tortex pick booth, booth. Today we've got Frank Gabali, we've got Eddie Van Halen, we've got, you know, it's like, really, like, you know, and again, like we said, we know what it costs or what it takes to get people to come to a booth. Like, at what point, you know, like, I remember, and polytone amps were, of course, the industry standard forever, but I never saw their booth more than probably the smallest one they ever had. So it'd have 2 guitar amps, a couple of bass amps. They'd have a double bass. But I mean, Ray Brown used to come every year and play. You'd have you know, who was it? I think Toots Tillman was there, you know, one year, like playing guitar and playing harmonica through the polytone amps. And you're just going, but that was back in the day when people were given stuff and they came and did for you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a whole different thing now. I mean, the deal, I remember the deal that Flea made with Modulus when they did the Modulus Flea bass, you know, and the girl that was running Modulus at the time, just talking about, you seeing Flea walk around, you know, he doesn't walk in the building unless somebody's paying him to be there. And I'm not being mean about Flea. He's a great guy, but, you know, they tour the world and make a lot of money every day. What do I really need to walk in and play a bass at a booth that has my name on it? People will just buy it. You know, I mean, Slash doesn't have to show up at the Gibson booth in Nashville, which is like not there anymore anyway. But, you know, it's like, so I just remember that deal and getting a call. Californication came out and it was like, we've just paid Flea all this money to play our bass and with his name on it and designed it, but he's using a Fender in the video. And I said, and, you know, like, I didn't have anything to do with it, but they were like, but you were there when we had the conversation. Like, she was trying to make me feel like I was going to say yes.
and then ring Flea up and tell him off.
Yeah. Flea, I cannot believe you're using a 1962 bass, you know, that costs more than your bass. It's like he plays it on tour. He's not going to take that bass on tour. Don't worry, you know. So, but then you've got the Adam Claytons of the world, you know, who have endorsements with 6 different companies, incredible players. But you just go, are they with Fender this week? Are they playing a Warwick? What are they? You know, it's
there's a lot of that. There's and I think I see it a lot with the sort of, I don't want to class them as internet. Well, there's a lot of players about with deals that have got deals basically on their exposure and then their influence on the internet. But to me, where does it stop? You're influencing people, and you get that. You have a lot of followers, so you're an influencer, and you talk sense about gear. So a company gets behind you, and you talk about that, and you influence all these people. In the next 6 months, you just completely ditch it, and you play a different brand.
Oh, well, there's a bass player online right now, and actually he's a friend. So but he had an amp and a bass, and they did a signature bass for him. And that was before lockdown. And last year he was playing it and it sounded great. And this bridge is specially made and there's a special bit. And then all of a sudden Christmas came and he's got another $5,000 bass, custom made. It's my signature. And it's like, you know, I mean, you've known me for a long time, Chris, and I talk about Ibanez. Even, I mean, I went out and bought the old ones, you know, so it's like, it's very funny. I mean, not that I have a signature, not that it matters, but there's a lot of guys. We were talking about somebody the other day, you and I, when we were talking about this, that seems to be all over the internet. And it's like every day there's a post and there's another post, and that's great. But he's a big enough name that does he really need to be doing that? You know, I was doing it for a while, you know, where it was trying to do my thing, and you get a lot of followers, whatever. But I've kind of realized 2020, there's 9,000 guys like me. So what am I giving? As long as I'm making money, the rent gets paid, stick with it, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally get you on that.
Yeah.
It's just the whole model has changed now. And, you know, it's like I said, doing virtual now this year and literally seeing, oh, so-and-so has released a new signature guitar for so, and I'm like, well, who's that? Oh, he's got a YouTube channel. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's 2 or 3 of those guys. Yeah. There's a girl. I mean, there's some amazing female players out in the last few years, I have to say. I mean, Laura Brazio and people like that, you know, and they're worth every dime. I mean, they're great players. But there's some that are literally YouTube players, and you go to their YouTube channel and you go, why have Marshall and everybody given them all this gear? You know, I mean, I haven't figured it out because it doesn't sound that great. It's, you know, I mean, these are even people that made it before we had better sound. So I still haven't figured it out, you know.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the way it's going. I guess. You know, it's
well, it's a bit like,
and it's a business. You know, you look at it at the end of the day.
Oh, of course,
there's people making really good money on YouTube. I mean, this is going to go out.
Oh yeah.
But like, if you get to a certain level of subscription, and you reinvest that money back into your craft, so you get the better cameras, the better.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Well, I mean, these guys,
you know,
well, I think it's funny though, the guys that are out there that see that once you get 1,000 viewers or, you know, 2,000, whatever, it can monetize. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because there are guys on Facebook threads saying, can you come join my thing? I'm trying to monetize my site. Yeah. And I look at one video and I think, mate, you practice. You should invest in practicing. Yeah. You know, so it's like, I mean, I've got hardly anybody on my YouTube, which I feel bad about. Anybody wants to come to my YouTube, hopefully we'll put that up later and you can see it.
Yeah,
I mean, I would love more people, but I started it mostly just to have a bit of fun and for me to work on my video craft. You know, again, getting the Mac was great. I ended up getting the Adobe Creative Suite. Yeah. So I was able to have all the toys in one, because I figured, well, I've got to do lockdown videos. Sometimes it's just easy to do it on your iPad and send it. But I wanted to be able to record the music separately, or at least when I'm doing the video, so that you can get a real sound. Because that's where I found everything was missing. You'd hear somebody's video and you're like, the drums and bass are gone because the mics were clipping all the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is the easiest way to do it. So, yeah. And I think that's helped, you know, get you a few extra things. So.
Yeah, I think it does. And then there's some I love to watch. You know, I do love watching like Rick Beato's channel and things like that. It's fascinating. Yeah. You know, it's all, you probably know him.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, it's there's a load of those guys. Like, I mean, the one that I was during lockdown, it got really fun. Lee Sklar, the bass player, of course,
banned from Facebook.
Yeah, well, yeah, he had a problem with the old president, but he had that problem for 4 years. He and Tom Bones Malone, the trombone player from the Blues Brothers and also the David Letterman show, he's been with everybody. And Tom's great. The two of them, it would be like all of a sudden I wouldn't see any feed from them for weeks, and then it's like I'm back.
Yeah,
and they start. Yeah, they started trying to figure out if they could hand out badges. If you could get a badge for the most amount of days off, kicked off. And then we did a thing with Lee, was great. Everybody took pictures of Lee and put them up the whole time he was off. So everybody else's picture was Lee. So that was quite just a fun, silly thing to do in the bass world. But yeah, Lee's was great because he's talking about tunes he's played on, and he's just sitting in his room. It's like, oh, I played on this Willie Nelson hit. I played on, problem is every song he mentions, I mean, he's probably got 700 videos up now, or what, 300 and some videos from last year, and everyone's a hit. You're like, Lee, what songs have you played on that sucked?
No.
It's like, yeah. When your first gig is James Taylor and Carole King, it's a bit tough. Not your first gig, that wasn't his first gig, but when you're known for that as your first thing from the 60s and 70s, life doesn't get much worse than that.
Not really. Oh, speaking of good gigs.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with Dolly Parton and that camp?
It's a funny story, but it's a bit like what I told you, the early ones. This was the pre-internet days, so it was all real word of mouth. I did, as a youngster, saying that, I had the Dr. John, and then I did the Broadway tour, and then I got a chance to play with Dizzy Gillespie before he died. So I had kind of this weird thing. And then in there, I moved to Nashville at one point, and I started playing with a lot of young acts. I was lucky enough to play for they're huge artists now, but you play for them when they're like nothing. Record labels used to hire us to do the South by Southwest Festival, and you'd go as a band, and it would be one band there all week, and you play with 7 different people because the record label wanted it to sound good, and the artist only had to play 5 or 6 songs. So we would rehearse in Nashville for a long time, get it right, go there and do the show, getting into that. And I ran into a lovely bunch of guys. Richie Owens, which I think I introduced you to at the NAMM show. Richie, he had the band called the Farm Bureau, which is a great little band in Nashville. But Richie had what is her cousin, is Dolly's cousin. And we had a band called Shinola. And we were playing gigs around town, and John Prine's record label was super interested into us. And we had a lot of that going on, but we were all session guys. So it was kind of like a great band doing weird stuff. I was playing electric upright, but we were doing like, almost Stray Caddy type stuff, but it was like the, old country. We had slide guitars. Richie plays. Actually, you probably knew Richie even more from Washburn and Gibson. He's the guy that brought all the slide stuff to those guys when they were doing the Weisenheimer guitars at Washburn. Right, he was the main cat doing all that, but he's into all that real ethnic Southern cool stuff. So we had that going on. We had Bob Ocker, who was great. Our singer, who was a great singer, but of course wasn't going to be the Dolly thing. And we had Bob from Michigan, a drummer that I actually knew when I lived in Michigan in the 80s, and randomly ran into him, and he was working at a music store. And so it all kind of came around that we had this band, and we were just doing regular gigs in between sessions. And Richie said, yeah, Dolly's thinking about doing a new album. Well, never came into us that he was related. He just said something about, Dolly's talking about doing a new, blah, blah. Oh, that's great. Well, his dad comes, and he's in Owens, and it's Richie Owens. And there's, and I'm going, this is weird. And his dad goes, yeah, my cousin is, her daughter's going to do a new album. And I said something like, oh, well, we should get on it. And he goes, well, actually, I think she's thinking about that. I was, oh, okay. And I just didn't really think about it. And then Richie comes back to us and goes, yeah, so that Dolly Parton album, Dolly'd like us to do it. And we're like, so then we start realizing he's actually a direct cousin because his mother was the youngest sister, Owens, which was Richie's dad's. It was mom. So it just got really convoluted. But it's like everything in the South. They're all related. I think they're, so I moved there, so I didn't count. But but yeah, so we got that, and in the process, A&M Records was closing that year, was 96, I think. And Herb Alpert had decided that he was done with the label and he wanted to move on. So Dolly didn't even have a record label. So she had A&M Records for years and years and years since she was younger. I think she started with Columbia, but moved to A&M because of 9 to 5, because A&M, of course, was every movie soundtrack there was in the world, you know.
Yeah.
So she was with A&M. So the deal came down that they were going to pay her out, or whatever the deal was, a decent sum of money. This is Dolly Parton you're talking about, on future sales. And when they sold the company, whoever they sold it to, she would have the offer to go with them or whatever. So, but basically, unlike Warner Brothers has just done by selling people's catalogs to other people without their permission,
Yeah.
A&M didn't do that. They said, here's your catalog back. Here's the money it's worth. And we loved having you on the thing, and anything that sells under our name will immediately go to you now in, you know, perpetuity. It was like, wow. So Dolly, we started this idea of doing the album. She came and saw us play, which was really surreal. You're at this gig in Nashville, like at this club, and all of a sudden there's like this little woman in rhinestones in a white wig. And you're like, is that Dolly Parton watching us play a set, you know? And she was like, oh, I think y'all are great. We got to do the album. And it was like, okay. So yeah, so that's, it kind of all came about that way. And then with the A&M deal, Richie had just bought a house, and Dolly said, why don't we just build a studio in your house? And I mean, this is back in the day when you didn't build a studio like this. It was like,
it was massive, yeah.
You know. Yeah, and sadly enough, I mean, we had an SSL board that had several Rupert Neve channels in it. And of course, Rupert's just died in the last week too. And that Dolly situation got me connected with so many more things than you ever thought. I mean, we actually were at an event with Rupert Neve, you know, and you're like, whoa, you know, and I just remember going, Rupert Neve, I'm Eric Rupert. And he goes, one of our names is the same. It was like, you know, but it was great. It took a month to do. We really kind of did almost 2 albums of stuff. And then it took forever for the project to finish because she was looking for a label. Of course, every label was running to get Dolly Parton, but she wanted it to be something. And yeah, so that's how that worked. And it was a ball working with her. It wasn't a long period, but it was a great fun, you know. And I mean, even the Slash thing was around the same time. The Slash thing was a complete accident. Artist relations, guy by the name of Gypsy Carnes, who was running LA and Nashville artist relations for Gibson for years. He and I were good mates. We were doing a lot of the same kind of thing you and I were doing at Ibanez, a lot of ideas. I was out doing clinics for, at the time, Steinberger, Mike Tobias. They had bought all those companies, Zeta, Electric Uprights. And that's how I got involved. Went over, worked with them for a long time. And then literally it was like, I had worked with Matt Sorum a couple times. We were in LA and it was, oh, Slash wants to do a gig, you know, just tonight. It was like right after the NAMM show. And I'm thinking, well, how many bass players does Slash know? You know, but it was, Matt's like, no, I told him it would be fun. And then he starts talking about electric jazz and, oh, I've been, you know, hanging out in LA with Les Paul. And I was going, what are we talking about here? So that was, you know, but it was all the same period. There was a period in my life, my wife laughs about it because she didn't know me then, that I used to get on an airplane sometimes. And this was back, you used to get a packet at the beginning of the year from like FedEx, and it would be all your paper tickets for the year for your tour. And I used to have to have like my anal retentive self. I had to have like folders and envelopes with the dates so I didn't miss anything. You know, I knew guys that like could show up and, oh yeah, oh, I'm glad today was the day. Like that was their attitude. And I'm going, haven't you been waiting like 3 days for this? You know, so, but I got on a plane one time and I was literally trying to figure out, am I playing country? rock or jazz where I'm landing. I was lucky enough to be working with enough people. I was like, crap, I can't remember what gig this is. I just had the plane ticket, but good old days, the good old days.
Yeah, one day maybe they'll come back again. You never know.
I mean, it was weird. I mean, you know this from doing your thing, but I mean, a lot of what I was lucky enough to catch on to was from artist relations guys. You'd have a gig, you'd go to these NAMM shows. Again, these NAMM shows for people
networking. I mean, it's what goes on after the show as well. When the show finishes that evening, that's where a lot of it's done.
There's loads of parties. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you remember, if you were doing it then, Anaheim closed for a while. They closed Anaheim for, 3 years Disney had rebought a lot of areas. And when we did, we moved it to LA. So it was at the LA Convention Center right downtown. And when we did that, the gigs went from but all the gigs, of course, you remember, were like, I say this because they weren't, because once they redid it and the convention center was rebuilt, so the new area with all the hotels and all the big places to play. Well, there was a time when Anaheim was like the small little convention center, and they'd play it like the Hacienda Hotel would have like Paul Gilbert and Racer X that night. You've got one of the coolest bands, and you go into like the Hacienda, and it literally looks like a Holiday Inn stage. Where like everybody's brought in gear. Well, the 3 years we did LA, the Mint was like a main gig, and Whiskey was a gig. And that was the year that it really flourished for me meeting people, because we were in LA. The LA cats were easier to get everywhere. They didn't have to hang out in Anaheim. And all of the venues were tripping over themselves, because the idea that you were going to get Stevie Wonder's band to play, not that most of them don't live in LA now, but at that time, most of them were living all over the world, because that's how the bands were. They just fly to the gigs and whatever. Then they all started moving to the same town. But yeah, I mean, Nashville's the same way. Before the Megadeth guys moved there, and before, Dan Huff and his brother moved there, which they're originally from Nashville, the Huff boys are. But they all started moving back to Nashville because LA, after the earthquakes, the bad ones, they wanted to get away. And I think they sold a 2-bedroom house in the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
And Dan Huff moved to Nashville, and he bought like a 3-story mansion out in Brentwood with a studio already built in it, and he gave his wife a Jag or something. That was like, the joke was like, and I was able to buy my wife a car. It was like, but they were all doing it.
A lot of them live in Nashville now, don't they? A lot of them.
Yeah. Well, I remember Mustaine was there doing the first album, and Dan Huff was producing it. And we saw them in Brown's Diner, which was like this. It was known for like what we would say grilled cheese and chili, but like your cheese sandwich. Yeah. But we were sitting there, and I had been in with some other guys, because it's near Music Row, so it was kind of a normal place for everybody to hang out. It was a great bar at night, so we'd all end up there on the way home. And I was there. I said, "Oh, hey, Huck. Oh, Dan, or Eric, do you know Dave? Oh, really lovely to meet you. Don't know loads about them. I mean, I knew their music, but it wasn't what I listened to." And all of a sudden he goes, "Is that Chet Atkins at the bar?" And I thought Dave Mustaine was like a 5-year-old at that point. He was literally like, "I got to meet Chet. I want to meet Chet." And it was weird to like see this guy who, has just got more than a couple of pence going, "That guy, I want to meet that guy," and Dan's like, "Oh, yeah, come on, we'll go over and meet." So it was weird. It was like, that whole meeting people. And when they started moving to Nashville and it became all of that, I can send you a picture. It's not a good one of me at all. But last year, 2 years ago, I was in Nashville, not for a NAMM show, but there was a vintage guitar show. And I only went down to see some mates and to hang out with a friend of mine that he actually makes guitar picks out of coins. It's called the Original Coin Guitar Pick Guy. And Ruvain's his name. Actually, even funnier, his album came out last year and I'm on it. So does it all. But we went down, and it was, we were reminiscing that myself, Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, and Gary Talent from the E Street Band, we all moved to Nashville the same year. And there was a point where we would see each other at gigs, and sometimes I would have a gig at 12th and Porter, which was a really lovely venue for a long time. It's gone now. 12th and Porter. I'd be the band that was playing. In the opening band, I'd look out and Tom Peterson would be the bass player in the opening band. And you're like, how does this work? But we were laughing about that. Like, Gary called me, I can't even remember when it was, but Gary had moved there, and it was like, I met him a couple times, and I got a phone call, and it was, hey, I'm looking for some double bass for this band I'm working with. Would you mind coming and, doing it until we find the right guy? And I was like, well, why wouldn't I be the right guy? And he goes, well, you're the jazz guy. We're looking for a rockabilly player, tattoos. I mean, he knew what he wanted, but I just remember going and doing that. So 2 years ago, when we saw each other, we were all three standing there laughing, like, look where we are now. It's like, and I think Tom Peterson says, I'm still in the opening band at all the gigs. Yeah, Tom, sure you are. Yeah. The highest paid side man in town, So,
you wouldn't knock that gig, would you?
No, but I mean, all those guys, again, Nashville is full of really friendly guys. I mean, Mustaine, all of them, they're all lovely. None of them are the persona. And I mean, you and I know this from meeting them. A lot of people don't get it. They either hear a bad story about somebody, or they hear the story about, oh, they snub me, or they won't talk, or you don't run up to somebody and ask somebody for an autograph. You know this. And we've all met people in that aspect. I mean, Chris, people that know a bit about you or don't, or people that are going to watch this, Chris is the guy that people called. Chris got the Steve Vai phone call, hey, Chris, I'm going to be in town, and I left one of my, guitars. Is there a way? I heard you have one, because of course he already knows what you have. You can't go, oh, I don't think so, And I mean, we had some great stories, you and I did, about a bass player friend of ours that talk about swapping gear and switching stuff and running away from gear. You used to have a lot of bass rigs for somebody, if I remember right. And then all of a sudden one day he didn't need them anymore. I should have taken them when you offered them to. They had road cases. But no.
Yeah, straight from the show to the studio, and then, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, the same thing. I mean, the Steve Vai conversation, when I was with Dean Markley, again, Dean put me on this thing about, we're having problems with one of our strings, talking about getting the call. And I think Vai was in Japan at the time. And I don't remember, it was either his tour or he was with somebody, I can't remember. But I got a phone call. It must have been 3:30 in the morning, States time. And it was like, hello. And it was my mobile phone. And I'm like, hello. And he's like, hey, Eric, it's Steve. I'm like,
Steve who?
Okay. And it's 3:30 in the morning. Steve who, man? I know it's not Stevie Wonder. You're not, and he's like, I'm having some trouble with my A string. And I'm like, Vai. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Is there any way that you can call me when I'm in the office? Yeah. How what, 10, 15 minutes? Like, Steve, it's 3:30 in the morning, it's like, oh, yeah. All right. Okay. And this was the beginning of emailing. And so people we didn't have laptops out on the road. I mean, he did, but we didn't have any of that easy to get to and easy to do. But yeah, so what those calls are like, you know.
Yeah. So what was wrong? I mean, what was wrong with his A string then?
Well, I don't like to tell stories, but there may have been some problems with the processing at the Dean Markley factory at one point, which got fixed.
Yeah, he'd spot it though.
Oh, well, no, there were A strings breaking on the Blue Steels, and he was playing Blue Steel at the time. So was Neil Schoen, and Neil called me one night, and he was just like, man, I've broken like 3 A strings. And I said, don't hit your guitar so hard. Don't
use the A.
Yeah. I'd say maybe that's not good string for you to use. But it was a processing. All of us deal with it. I mean, you've gotten the phone call. Hey man, you sent me a guitar. It's great, but 2 of the pickups don't work. And you're like, okay. Like, I'm here. What can I do?
Sometimes things like, you get like bad batches of tubes, which is nothing to do with it's just you don't know. You can do your testing on them and put them on soak test for hours and hours and hours, but you still don't know that maybe on the third hour they'll blow up because
and you know what it's like. I mean, dealing with artists in general, I mean, it's great, but at the same time, all I'm saying is really is none of these guys are, any different than any of us. So when people have those bad experiences, they just need to take a step back and go, how would it feel if you were that big and you knew 800 people were going to run at you? I mean, Paul Gilbert's got to be one of the nicest, friendliest, like that guy will literally stand and talk to every person in the audience after a show.
Yeah.
I watched the event people tell him he had to shut up. It's like, sorry, you need to go backstage and we need to get the people out of here. Oh, just a couple more autographs. You know how Paul is, just a couple more, and he's like, he's moving down the row, and it's like, you really have to leave. And then but Paul's one of those guys that'll be like, okay, look, in 25 minutes, we're at the blah, blah, blah hotel. And all of a sudden you walk in, the hotel's flooded with people. And you're like, why did you tell him that you were here? And he's like, I felt bad, but it's great. I mean, those are the cats, those, and everybody's really like that. I mean, Dolly, she's $1 million. Slash the same. I mean, I don't know if you ever worked with him or got to deal with him at all, but he was always just the nicest guys. I never had any issues.
The only thing I loved with Slash was when he was signed on the Seymour Duncan booth the one year, and literally was 5 foot away from me because I was on the edge of the Laney booth and it was right next to the Seymour Duncan. I was like, so I think there's a picture of me like,
it's like, get the right angle. But no, I mean, they get a bad rap. Most artists get a bad rap because of those kind of things. I mean, I've had the bad experience with people too. You have, you have bad experiences, but it's all about the day and the time.
It's the day and the time. It's like anything else. You don't know what's going on in someone's life and what's going on at home, and they've literally got to be there and be Mr.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Daltrey, doing the Daltrey gig was like, hey, there's this cat we need you to play bass for. Okay, great. You walk in the room, there's this little old guy with a fro, and he's playing the guitar, and they're trying to do a Who tune, and he's telling the guitar player, I think it's a D chord, or maybe it's a G chord. And I think I said something like, I think it's in G. And then he just turns and goes, if Pete was here, he'd know. And I'm going, I'm playing with you. It's like, okay, this will be all right. This is all right gig, But that was great. That was with Chris Difford. When Chris was doing, he was doing this Writers at Sea thing. So we would go on the ships and perform with different artists. It was great. It's actually where I had known Guy Pratt. Another guy who did some great videos last year on lockdown was Guy Pratt, doing all the songs that, he's played and stuff you don't even realize he's on. Half the time you don't realize it. Plus he's a great comedian, but he was on as one of the things. And it was funny because I remember saying to somebody, I play bass for Guy Pratt. And they're like, he's a bass player. You're like, yeah, but he plays guitar and sings too. But, it's what it is. More toys, more things. So what else have we got going on?
Well, I guess we could talk forever, but I was going to say for one, just to close up something.
We could do this. We haven't.
I think I'll do a part 2 as well soon at some point. Once I get some more followers and things like that. But what advice then would you give to anyone who was starting out or aspiring to play bass? What do you think nowadays? Would that advice have changed from the advice you may have had when you were younger, or because there's that much difference in technology now? Actually, what was your top tips be for people?
Well, I think especially doing what I did yesterday with Solent University, I found that what is missing from the routine is routine. I mean, COVID aside, I don't think people kind of have the light at the end of the tunnel like we used to. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of that. So either you were good or you didn't work. There were only 2 ways to go. And it was all word of mouth, but I would have to say that, as a player, try to be as versatile as possible. I know that's a tough one. People don't always get that. They want to be a rock guy, a jazz guy, but you'll work more. I mean, I've been lucky. I've played with in every genre, every realm you can. Reading music, I still think is very, very important, because you never know when you're going to have to do it. So, those are the kind of things that I think of. But I think versatility. And I had a producer, actually, it might have been a road manager one time. I said, what would you instill in me? He instilled two things. And the one was, don't say no. You never know when you say no, that might have been that thing. I mean, the Dolly Parton thing happened because a bunch of us got together and somebody said, hey man, would you want to come do this? I could have easily said, oh, I'm just a bit too busy. But I thought, nah, they're a bunch of fun guys. We're not, it's guys getting together, having a beer, having a smoke and playing some music. And you end up being on Dolly Parton's album or the Slash, any of those things are all, hey, Eric, are you comfortable? Slash needs somebody tonight really quick. Okay. It's like, I mean, I was playing the electric upright at the Gibson booth, showing off the Zeta electric uprights. And it was like, hey, Eric, you'd be perfect for this. Who thought I was perfect for that gig? You know what I mean? But luckily, both Henry, oddly enough, the owner of Gibson at the time, I was playing in his band. And I will tell you, if you ever play with Henry, you only need to know the key G for every song. You'll be fine. Beside the point. But yeah, so it was never say no. And you have to say no sometimes when you're too busy or it's out of your depths. I don't usually run to the reggae gigs. That's not usually my thing. I enjoy the music, but I don't always feel it the same as I feel big band swing or a great rock tune or some country stuff. The other thing is when you get the gig, if it's with a big artist or any artist, but Dizzy Gillespie's road manager told me one time, he said, be in the band, don't be a fan. And it was the best advice I think I had ever gotten, because inside you can jump up and down and be like, oh dude, I'm playing with Roger Daltrey. This is going to be the most amazing thing in the world. No, I think it's in G, mate. It's like, on the outside, you just have to do it. I mean, Chris, you understand it because like you said, you can be a foot from the guy that you think is the most ridiculous player in the world. I mean, again, I was lucky enough to meet Eddie. I was lucky enough to meet Stevie. I, met a lot of the artists, and half the time you go, when you walk away from it, you go, wow. I think George Clinton was one of the weirdest because he's just such a weird vibe. But I walked away from George Clinton going, I'm not sure if I'm excited or freaked out by that. It was like, yeah. But yeah, I think that's the two things. I think, but be prepared for all of it. That's the thing. I think I watched something the other day that said something about, paraphrasing it, something about you can't get what you want unless you do it, basically. The old Nike term, just do it. But we should get some endorsement credits for the Nike.
I think we should. Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I'm more of a Converse guy, but whatever, we'll go with that.
Well, after last week's when we had the singer going on about the thing he was trying to advertise, that I totally didn't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's all sponsorships greatly received, but yeah, I didn't really expect to in the middle of a music-y type podcast be talking about manscaping, but
yeah, well, trust me, we'll stay away from that. I'll leave that to Rob Lowe. We'll let Rob Lowe deal with all the products. He's doing fine with that. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, it's basically preparation. Just make sure you've got it all. I mean, it's tough. One of my students yesterday had a really good thing to say. It's tough in this pandemic because you've got nobody there to reinforce whether you're doing the right things. And I think the internet, and now I don't want to go anywhere wrong, but I think we're in such a nanny state in every aspect now of what we write, say, do, that you have to be careful. I hate that because there's something so great about being somewhat irreverent. And I think that it was Rowan Atkinson last week or something put out a thing about, why can't we say what we want to say? That's how I made money all these years, So, Dave Allen, we were watching the Dave Allen movie. Yeah, well, Ian Gillian plays him in a movie called Dave Allen and Death or something. Dave Allen, I can't remember what the name of the movie is, but it's great. It wasn't the hardest stuff that he had ever done. It wasn't the most shocking, but it was great. I think all I'm trying to say is you put things up on the internet, you put it up on your Facebook, and you put it up on your Instagram, and you get so many positive and negatives. I think people have to realize that the negative is usually somebody pissed because they don't have it or they don't get it. And take the positive stuff and keep that in the back pocket and say, somebody really liked what I did. And that's what matters. But yeah, be prepared. Don't worry about what everybody's got to say. Worry about the people that you need to say things. If I would have been on the road playing with somebody and they would have said, oh, you're crap, then I'd, go down. But you don't go down then either. When somebody says something's wrong, you just fix it. It's easy, until you're big enough to walk away from it and go, I don't care. You don't have that ability. You got to say yes and do it. And, and just for everybody else, great gear. But again, we've talked about Harley Benton. We've talked about some of the most inexpensive stuff, in our lifetime. We've seen the stuff that was at that price be the worst stuff in the world. And now we know, you're talking about, I'm buying Japanese basses that sold for $199 back in the day and seemed a bit expensive, but the Fenders were $700 then. Yeah. Now they're selling for the same price that Fenders are selling for. So hold on to it, play it. It'll be worth it.
It's a great world in terms of gear we live in at the moment. I still think right now that it's probably the golden age of being a musician, because there's that much quality gear available for prices that you wouldn't even have thought of years ago. It's
oh yeah. Well, and people that say they don't have enough time to practice, they're liars.
There you go.
I wish I practiced more.
You got. Well, yeah, I wish. I think I put up last year. I think it came from my Facebook memories, just to finish off. But it came up with. Because I remember exactly the day that I started playing guitar, because an album came out on that day, which kicked it off for me. And it came out, and it was like, I've been playing 25 years today, and I thought I really should be a bit better.
Every time I leave a gig and somebody goes, "Man, that was great," I always just go, "As long as you're happy." You're never happy when you walk away. You're always happy about your attitude and the thing, Yeah. But no, just that's it. Those are the things. I'm going to be I don't do the podcast or anything, but I want to do a thing about what's in your gig bag, which is kind of, instead of it's both real and surreal, because it's not only about what you carry, what you should have when you get to the gig, because we all know you get there and you go, oh man. But I'm OCD. So I have every gig bag has a cable, a strap, every bass, my Levy's guys, I've turned into I love Levy's, and they've re-put out the Perplex clear strap. And they sent me 9. I said, I love them. Can I have some? Yeah, we're really not selling them. I said, can I get some? Yeah. Sent me 9. I'm just I hid some away. So
now you've got levitating floating basses when you play
Well, the best part is your outfit always matches your strap. See,
that's another great tip for the kids out there. Mate, it's been fantastic catching up, and we will definitely do another one when I've got a bit more established and doing a bit more.
No, it'd be great, man. Again.
Maybe even when we've got a bit more news and when we can get together and actually do these gigs.
Maybe we'll do one live. We'll do a live cast with a performance.
That would be fun.
That would be great. That'd be great.
That'd be fun.
As long as I can drive to your tier, then we'll be okay.
Perfect.
Whatever that means.
Perfect. No, it's been brilliant. We'll add every link to.
I'll send you an email. I'll send you an email if you send me a copy. I know we're still videotaping. Sorry. But if you send me a copy, I can find everything I talked about, like Nordstrand stuff, and I'll send you all the bits. Yeah, or brilliant. You can connect it to my website, either one. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll do all that.
Because I feel bad. I didn't even talk about, I had a really cool ramp made by this guy in Italy, which is cool. So we'll do that on another one. Yeah. We could do a gear one. Actually, it might be fun for you to host my What's in the Gig Bag thing.
That'd be cool.
So you could do it. You can put it on your thing, and then I can put it up. We can do it as a host thing. That'd be cool because we could talk about gear and maybe even beers.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Or vodka and 3 olive martinis.
Or gin. Or
I'm really into the martinis lately. Oof.
Really?
Yeah.
See, martinis like not. It comes in and out of fashion, doesn't it?
Not for me. I love a vodka martini, 3 olives, dirty.
Shaken and stirred.
Always shaking. You shake vodka, you stir gin. Well, we found at Lidl's in their deluxe range. I love. Here we go. another endorsement. Another endorsement by Lidl. At Lidl, they were selling stuffed olives with the piment and garlic together. Oh, so yeah. I went out. My wife didn't like it, but I bought 4 bottles instead of 1. Like, you got to have them, don't you? You got to have excess.
Yeah,
you got to have excess.
Well, that's it. That's it.
We're the kings of that. All right, go away. Do your closing or whatever.
Yeah, man. So all the links were below. Please like and subscribe as well. That'll really, really help me out. And I'll see you next week for some more interviews with some really interesting people like Eric. Eric, thank you very much for today. It's been
thank you,
fantastic.
Chris. Have a great day.
And we'll catch you up with you when we get back to you later in the series.
Sounds good. Cheers, mate.
Over and out, buddy.
Thanks, man.
You've been listening to the Beer and Gear podcast with Chris Taylor.